Hi, Tyria. Happy Friday, and welcome to the newest episode of Guild Chat. I'm your host, Ruby, and I'm here with the first round of developer guests to talk about our new episode, Whisper in the Dark. First, I want to show off. This is solely for the one person in chat who wanted to know what I was holding in my hands. And none of the rest of you have heard your eyes. No. I did want to show off something we've been talking about for a while. We have the prototypes, two of the first prototypes of our Funko Pops that are coming in January. So Baby Aureen, surprisingly heavy. I don't know. She's got all of her little crystal spikes on the back of her head.
Yeah.
But our events manager gave us these today to show off. So there's your first look at Funko Pop Baby Aureen. And can I give this to you?
Sure.
Just you have to give it back. Please hold this for a second.
Okay. And they're admirably not like cookie cutter Funko like. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There's a lot of individuality here.
Mm-hmm.
I really like it.
And then we have Joko. I know. I love this one.
I'm thinner in person.
Thank you. We should have got Nolan Northup in here.
I know.
I'm actually going to take this out of the box because I just want a better look.
Live
at it.
unboxing.
Yes.
Oh no! Now I feel pressure to do it really.
Just kidding.
No.
Just pretend I didn't say
It's
it.
too late. I'm scared.
Okay.
And I know Funko Pops aren't for everybody. I have several on my desk. Stefan is a big fan, but for those of you who love them, these are
so
extremely cool.
It's so good.
I know there are some people who are fans who are hardcore about not taking them out of the box.
Oh yeah.
All of mine are out of the box. I'm I bought them to look at them.
Yes.
I want to see
And touch them and play them.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
I know. I love him.
It's got the little ring in the jaw and everything.
Yeah, the detail's great.
Yeah, I was really happy. And you're right. These are not. They don't look like the standard issue. We don't have Ritlock yet, but for those of you who do like Funko Pops and have been waiting to see what they look like, there you go.
And you get a little in-game pet version.
And so you get the in-game mini pet when you buy them. They're coming in January. You can pre-order now. I know you can pre-order at GameStop. I'm not sure off the top of my head where else. Check your area stores that sell Funko Pops and see if you can pre-order them. But this is what they look like. So
fantastic.
Yeah, you can hang on to her for the whole rest of the show.
Can I? It's good. Actually, gives me something to do with my hands.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started? I'll let the three of you introduce yourselves, talk about what you do here at ArenaNet, and what you worked on for Whispers in the Dark.
I'm Tom Abernathy. I am the studio narrative director. I just played studio narrative director for Whispers in the Dark. The great bulk of the narrative work on the episode was done by Samantha Walschlager, who was the lead writer on it, and also by Julia Narden, who was the narrative lead and story editor, narrative lead for GW2, and story editor on the episode. And we we do things as a group, so everybody totally had some hands in it, but it was principally the work of those two, and so I will represent them as best I can.
All right, you guys were awesome.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Clayton Kisko. I'm the team lead for episode 1 and senior game designer here at ArenaNet. I worked on the Essence manipulation mastery system. I worked on a handful of the reward structure stuff. I had the Wendigo chain. There was a lot of stuff. I had the Bone Skinner. Yeah, see, sorry. All right, Bone Skinner. And then what else? Gosh, there's a tons of other stuff that I had my hands in. But yeah, those were the main things. So.
Joseph Clark, I'm senior sound designer. I was kind of the point of contact for audio on the episode, so kind of led the direction while the rest of the team came in and helped us finish this content. And I worked on the Bone Skinner. I worked on Raven Magic. I worked on pretty much all the audio.
There's a lot of audio love in this episode, for sure.
Yes, definitely.
All right, well, why don't we kind of go through this in order? How did you guys get started working on this episode? What were some of the first outlines of what do we want to do with episode 1, kicking off the Icebridge Saga, once we get through the prologue?
Yeah, so we went through a couple different...
Think back, way back.
I'm trying to remember, and I know we always knew it was going to have a darker tone. We always knew we were going to
I think the horror film
creepy
vibe got settled pretty early, right?
Yeah.
And I know Samantha was super excited
about
that.
That's her jam, right? And we were having so much fun in those early meetings, pitching ideas and brainstorming. How can we scare the player? How can we introduce mechanics and themes that will hold up in a giant shared open world. And just kind of getting that across. I remember us watching The Thing for inspiration and just kind of going over other movies that we really liked. So it was a lot of brainstorming meetings with that. There's definitely like some other stuff that we ended up like walking away from. I remember one point we were toying with the idea of Jotun, kind of like, oh, what if there was some stuff over here that we kind of play with? And we wanted to make sure that this was like a succinct kind of like, let's focus on the Norn, let's focus on the spirits of the wild, let's tell the story of Amora and Javi. And so then, it starts really big, right? And then you keep whittling it down until you feel like everything is consistent and everything is kind of like thematically connected.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Is this how the weekly horror movie thing got started? Like
That got started a long time ago.
Okay.
It's not just horror movies. It's any movie that's terrible.
Okay. So Joseph invites like most of the studio
Anyone who wants to come,
to come after work once a week and watch horror movies. And I actually thought it was only horror movies. And that's why I never come, because I can't watch that stuff.
Fair.
And I was like, wait a minute, did this start as inspiration?
Some of the worst horror movies from the 80s are some of the best comedies, in my opinion.
Okay.
And stuff like that.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite?
Favorite what?
Like horror movie from the 80s that's also a great comedy?
Ghostbusters.
That's not horror.
It's horror-ish.
Oh, yeah. I think
It
that's
has
just...
its moments.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
genre
fair.
fights.
I'm blanking.
I put you
Killer
on the spot.
Clowns from Outer Space. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
good.
sure.
Good
That's
stuff.
fair.
Return of the Living
Attack
Dead.
of the Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, yes. That's awesome.
Okay, so how about you? Way back to story breaking.
Yeah. So I mean, again, I think our goal for the season, and I think it's pretty apparent at this point now that we've put out a prologue and our first real episode, is to delve into Char and Norn culture. The Char stuff, particularly with through Ritlock and Krisha and Bangar and Ryland, and the plan that Bangar has to basically create a Char nationalist army and try to, make Jormag his pet elder dragon. And with the Norn, getting more of a sense of their culture through Javi, for one, who's a character who's definitely going to be important as we go forward, but also with Bram, because we started last season sort of tracking the process of Bram getting out of his sort of emo, immature wallowing phase and beginning to come to terms with his mom's death and with what his obligation was to his guildmates in Dragon's Watch, and the fact that was the family that he'd always sort of felt like he'd never had, and he just didn't realize it, and that was awesome. And now, as we move forward, there are still other ways in which Bram still has to grow if he's going to sort of fully self-actualize. I think some of that is when he's tried to be a leader in the past, he's not always succeeded very well at it, and sometimes he's even run away from it.
Yeah.
And also he's never been able to turn into his the spirit animal that he follows, and that's in episode 1 and in Whisper in the Dark. It's a little bit of a sticking point for him. It's a bit of a shame thing, right? And so he's got some growth to do there.
He's got a lot of stuff to come to terms with
For sure.
at this point.
That's right. The other thing that I'll say about it is the season I think is darker in general than a lot of stuff we've done in the past. And when I say that, not that we haven't done stuff that's high stakes, but it's darker in terms of the moral complexity of it, and sort of getting away to some degree from kind of fantasy tropes of what that looks like, and more getting into at least horror movie tropes of what it looks like, or really, I mean, hopefully something that feels dark because it's real, right? And Bram's journey is certainly part of that. What Bangar is trying to do is part of that. The question for Ritlock and Krisha of who Ryland is and where his sympathies really, his allegiances really lie, and what that could mean, are part of that. And what happens to remind me, do we not spoil here, or do we assume people have have played the episode rather?
We're spoiling here.
Okay.
And we say this.
Yes, there it is.
There it is.
Spoiler alert.
There's the thing.
Yes.
We talk about this every episode, but if you are watching, we're talking about everything in the episode. We are going to assume that you've played through. You know what happens. We're going to spoil you.
Yep.
Go nuts.
Okay. So, as people who've played the episode know, Javi and Almora are among those who are abducted when the Sons of Svanir attack Jorah's Keep. They are not killed immediately, although a lot of other Vigil folks are. And that's a frightening thing because some of the male Norn in the Keep who are part of the Vigil get turned to Sons of Svanir. So that's the betrayal of people you trusted is a big theme. Right?
Yeah.
And betrayal by people you trusted. And ultimately, we discover in the episode that while Javi is still alive and has escaped, Almora has been killed. And what I will say is there's been some talk about that. I know players have been sort of contemplating the way in which that's presented, and what I'll say about it is that they're going to get a much fuller idea of what went down off screen in episode 1 a little bit down the line, and we're planting seeds. We're planting seeds for things. We're planting seeds for things that will pay off and become much richer as they're more fully sort of revealed. Okay. And so, but you know, we're dealing with heavy themes this season, and we want to get real, and I think that's what we're doing. And so for us, that was the thing to start, and that helped inform the tone, the horror movie sort of approach, and the as people have talked about, sort of that, you know, the still woods with snow softly falling, and you hear something out there walking, and maybe you hear a voice, and you're like, oh my god, you know, we wanted all that stuff.
It was a little bit Robert Frost, but from hell. So you mentioned, you know, we're going to talk about this a little bit more down the road too, and players will find out more. That brings to mind something that some of you all have been talking about too. This episode was a little bit shorter, and that's something that we've talked about internally some. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. And Z, people may remember if they watched the streaming event or were in the theater in September. Z talked about how we're going to be, rethinking sort of what episode releases might look like in ways that are designed to make them more to add value, right? So folks may have noticed that we put out the prologue in the middle of September, and episode 1 came out in the middle of November, and that is an indication of sort of what we hoped to sort of hit. We're gonna bring you that kind of content more often. It's gonna be maybe a little smaller at times to sort of help us do that. There's also going to be a lot of cool content that drops between the narrative part of the episode drops, right? There's going to be new events, there's going to be new activities in the world, and you can speak much more specifically to that. But what we hope is, or what our goal is that every time players, log in, there's something new for them to do, and they're getting more fun and value on a more regular basis, and not having to wait so long for, a big drop, basically.
Yeah, and it's just to piggyback off what you were describing when you said events. Like, we have the strike missions that are coming out. I believe the Furnir is this coming up week, and then the Bone Skinner the following week. I've been kind of hush-hush, but we have little tiny little tiny prop changes or little tiny dialogue additions, like as the weeks
Things
roll
will
out.
evolve. That's right.
And so keep an eye out for that. Like, we'll be having little bits of pieces. We have festivals as always between those types of releases
That's
as
right.
well.
There are 2 strike mission bosses that haven't even dropped yet.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Okay, so hush, so I don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Or
The cat's out of the bag now, I guess.
Right.
Yep. But yeah, look out for that.
Yeah.
So we're trying some new things, and we think people are going to really like them because that's our goal is to give folks more new stuff more often.
So the goal is games are to be fun.
Yeah, I guess we
well,
could say that out loud. Right?
Weird, but you do you, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's just a little bit more frequent releases and a little bit more to do. And
On a rolling basis. Yeah, for sure. And then the other thing, just to go back to sort of the conceptualization of the season for a second, because I didn't mention Jormag, and obviously that's a big deal. And one of the creepiest things I have ever seen is the cinematic at the end of the episode where
Oh.
Jormag uses the dead Freinier's body to speak through it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, just the creepiest. The animation, the Cinemax team did unbelievable work, and I know Chelsea and Jess are going to be here later.
We're going to talk about that in the second segment.
Oh
but yes, please.
man, I mean, gosh, it's creepy and terrific, and features two amazing performances actually, by Deborah Wilson, who is the actor who does Jormag, and by Fred Tatasciore, who did the voice of the Freynier, and the two of them are actually really good friends, and so he really matched her cadence and stuff, but with his jaw half hanging off, and like the mixture of their two voices there is just chilling to me.
Terrifying.
Oh my god.
That was so scary.
Yeah, but Jormag, I mean, there's so much in this season that's so juicy about people's agendas, their hidden agendas, and who you can trust and who you can't. And Jormag, as we've said, we like to refer to Jormag as the dragon of ice and persuasion. And Jormag's way of getting what Jormag wants is to persuade you that you should want it too. And, not to do it by brute force. And I think that comes through, particularly in that cinematic, that speech. It's really apparent for the first time how Jormag thinks and operates, and how much you choose to trust them is up to you. But Jormag has an agenda. Bangar has an agenda that we know some of now. It was revealed at the end of the prologue episode. Ryland may have an agenda. We don't know. There are other characters that are new who we don't know that well yet, and this season, I think, is built on suspense and discovering secrets in an ongoing way, and so that's why I say we're hopefully what we're doing is we're planting things that as the full significance of them becomes clear, it's going to be like, oh my God, that's what that was about, or like that, and oh, that's what you wanted the whole time.
Yeah,
that's what we're aiming for.
The first episode of like the saga is definitely setting up a lot of teeing up a lot of questions, but also setting the tone pretty well. And like Jormag being creepy is definitely apparent. And like even in the open world, when we were doing you're doing some audio design and we're getting some dialogue written for the random whispers that happen while you're just playing. I've seen a couple streams now of players that this was not meant to be. It just lined up perfectly where they'll meet a new NPC and then that thing will trigger because it's just on the time.
Right.
And it'll be like, I have seen the end. Kill them. And you're like, what? Jormag wants me to kill today. You have no idea, right? And it's going to change. It's going to be random. And it's really great to see people kind of freak out.
It is wild. Yeah. And as things go on, you're going to just see more things like that in the world. One of the things people may have noticed is that we're moving some of what in the past probably would have been thought of as golden path storytelling into the open world. And part of that is because we are doing more things in the open world that you can do over and over again. And our approach, I mean, we could just be like narrative light and just, give dialogue for, yay, hit the thing, yay, you beat the thing. But what we'd rather do is contextualize those things with a story in a way that makes sense. So one thing that happens in this episode is that there are some battles that you can fight. There are events in the meta that are actually sort of time loops that the Freynier has created. And so even though, as you do them multiple times, you will hear the characters involved in them suddenly go, wait a second, did we do this already?
Yeah.
What is this? What's going on? Are we, I have deja vu, right?
Yeah.
I love that sort of aspect of there's more in the open world to find. And I think that, I hope that it really incentivizes people to spend a lot of time running around just looking for all the different pieces, because so much of that stuff is fun and awesome gameplay, and also is adding some context to the story and adding, a little bit by bit a pebble to the wall, right?
100%. And I was describing to some players that we've improved on our poster tech that allowed us to do that. So previously, you could have Bram in the open world, but he had to be static because his animation or the thing the context in which you're talking to him have to be for every player at any step. But now we can have a Bram that runs around and animates specific to you. To other players, they see a Raven, but this Bram is fighting, healing you, like, and doing all this stuff. And so now we can also have events in which players will see those different kind of dialogues where the first time they play with him, they're looking for him more. The second time, he's like, I feel like I'm doing this over again, and that's Jormag whispering, like, just keep, like, trying to keep you doing your thing and staying over in this little corner, right? And then when you're not on that story step, it's a completely different group of people who are also experiencing this weird time loop. That tech has opened up a lot of doors for us.
And the work that the designers, content designers and narrative designers both did on that stuff is, again, very much in keeping with the tone that we want for the whole thing, right? Like, if you've played that stuff, you see, like, Bram has to fight what he thinks is his dad.
Yeah.
Marjorie has to fight what she thinks is the spirit of Belinda pulled out of her sword, and by the end of it, she is a wreck.
Yeah.
I mean, you've taken somebody who usually is a model of, like, calm and cool stability, right?
Super chill.
Rendered almost a blubbering, little mass on the floor, to the point where when the rest of them go off to finish the episode, she's like, I think I'm going to hang out here for a while.
That has hit players. Like, you were speaking to, like, the darker tone, but the mature kind of darker tone that we're going for.
Yep.
And, like, that is one thing that people have called out too, is, like, Marjorie just kind of, like, pacing and trying to get in contact with Kaz. Like, like, oh God, like, this really affected her.
Yeah, and to specifically speak to those two characters for a second, because I know people are interested and care about them. And we talked a little bit about Marjorie and Kaz in the previous Guild Chat after episode 1. After the prologue. But we're going to be, delving more into Marjorie and Casimir, some in this season, some in things to come, because we realized at some point that as we were trying to figure out where we wanted to take them, where we wanted to go with them, that the reason we were having trouble figuring out what that should be was because we didn't really understand them as individual characters first, as human beings in their own right, rather than just as a couple. I know people celebrate them as a couple for very good reasons. And so that's why you see some different notes being hit in both of them in the prologue, and I don't think we have Casimir in episode 1, but certainly in Marjorie. They are I think mature is a really good word for it. Like we're trying to, especially with the two of them, deal with a relationship, an adult relationship, where they've been through some traumas, and one of them especially is sort of undergoing some changes in her sense of who she is as a result. But we don't just want to talk about that. We want to actually synthesize it into the gameplay, and that's what I really love about that event. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, when content design and narrative design are able to really wrap together and be doing the same thing, accomplishing the same thing at the same time in their various ways, that's
it sings.
Yeah, totally.
For sure.
That's awesome. Something that you mentioned, you were talking about the end when Jormag had possessed the corpse of the Freyr, and that audio layering of Fred Tatasciore and Deborah. That was one of the things about the Jormag whispers that I really noticed that was so creepy. Like that very like smooth and friendly and almost seductive, and then that like that raw, deep, terrifying underlay. And that I've noticed that consistently on the audio front, that weaving in and out where it just kind of breaks through every once in a while. And I feel like that speaks to the entire audio tone of this episode. How did you even begin, and how did you get that theme throughout the episode? Because it's so creepy.
Yeah.
And on a thematic level.
Chris Burgess will definitely speak more to this in the next talk. But we're trying to convey the idea that Jormag, and as you're seeing it, is trying to take control of this body. And it's not just like a turn on the engine and you're good to go. So you're kind of getting that.
It takes some effort.
You're kind of like hearing that. You're getting a little bit of the corpse. So we have just a lot of processing and some interesting, I think Chris had done his own like gutturals kind of adding into there, and other some excellent layers.
And to be clear, it's not just the corpse position.
Sure,
it's the entire episode, open world, everything is just this consistent theme of this cold, terrifying Jormag is coming, and
Right.
Probably so's the Bone Skinner.
And the voice did that in the Icebreed Saga trailer that we showed at the Moore Theater as well, right? Like you hear that
Yes,
that undertone come to the front
yes,
by the
it's
end.
so scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a lot of like psychoacoustics. There's definitely like frequencies and types of sounds that you want to convey that would just pull emotions out of people. So as you're going through the world, and as we started working on it, you all did an amazing job just making everything spooky right away. So then it's our job to kind of come in and just solidify and make the immersion of that, like just freak people out, because basically,
Good work.
Yeah.
yeah, it's like paranoia is kind of like what's happening, right? It's similar to like The Thing or Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yep.
It's like everyone's your enemy,
That's right.
but you don't know who your enemy is. And so yeah, just trying to add the whispers in perfect places, choosing when to pull out ambience, like make it really full and creepy, or just having it like. Then there's like a creepiness to like silence or like very quiet. So when you go into the haunted forest, everything kind of drops out. You don't get as much of the wind and like the just normal ambience. It just kind of gets real calm, and that's unsettling. We also pulled the music out. We have a specific ambient track throughout the rest of the map, but as you go into the forest, we have a very low intensity type of spooky one shots coming in and out, and just really wanting to make people unsettled.
In chapter 1, there is in the cabin when you go in. You I think you did that, and people have. I was watching some players stream, and they were commenting on the fact that like, whoa, hold on, you could just hear like the wind and like the snow like howl, and like that added to
There's
the
a lot of power
ambience
in silence.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Ironically, that's what the chapter's called, Silence. So that's great. And then we had that one jump scare. Speaking of horror tropes, that like had the spawner like pop out, right?
That's right.
And you added this like kind of spooky like music, I think, right?
When you first when you open the doors, you see all the bodies. You're like, whoa. We did. I mean, it's a little tropey, but it works and it's amazing. We added a lot of pizzicato strains. It's very unsettling.
Our QA embed Kent like was playing that. Like, oh no! Like I was genuinely scared and frightened when that moment
I
happened.
could just see him too.
Yeah.
I bet that was amazing.
Oh, I was laughing. Yeah, it was.
Spawner busts through. We want to just hit you with a really high tension, like high strain stinger. So you get that, and that just high tension, like high frequencies, just make you feel tense.
Yeah.
So as soon as that person comes out and we hit you with that stinger, it just. I think it got me one time. Like I wasn't even paying attention. I think I was doing something else. I was like walking backwards or something, and it flew off the door. I'm like, oh my god!
You did it.
I know.
You scared yourself.
I'm like, mission accomplished. Yeah.
Cool.
So, do you want to talk about some of the other audio things that you put in there? Because I know you brought at least one video.
I did, yes. I could go on for a long time, but I pulled out some of the Bone Skinner sound design that I did.
Okay.
This was direction from design. We want a really like kind of creepy open world kind of clicking chatter or chitter sound that you just kind of hear in the distance or when the Bone Skinner is coming after you.
I was like, I really like the Predator movie where you hear the like, and it like he's around somewhere.
Yeah.
But you have no idea when it's gonna kill you, kind of deal. That was my like one inspiration. Right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So
Joko.
like Predator, I can do Predator.
Yeah.
It's a little different. Maybe
Right. Yeah. Way better.
So yeah, I have a quick video of some of the sound design for that. Quick note. It's kind of funny. We've spoken this in the past, like audio and sound design and Foley. Like it's a lot of experimentation, a lot of happy accidents. Like not always planned. Like sometimes I have an idea, but kind of speaking to that Jorme controlling a voice. You find out later in the episode that the first call from Almora was actually Jormag.
Right. Yeah, I forgot to mention that one actually. So that's Courtney Taylor and Deborah Wilson.
That's
Nice.
very
nice.
and just the we wanted to not make it super obvious, obviously. Like, well, that was really weird, right? But we wanted to like again, in our mindset, I suppose it was Jormag had figured it out for Elmore at that point, but we wanted a little bit, so we kind of started out with a little bit of Jormag's lines, and then kind of played into Amora, like, blended more into Amora, so you kind of get a hint of something's wrong, and then on top of that, we wanted to add some static, some kind of disruption, and we we wanted to get a little bit of like a zombie Elmora trying to use this comm.
Mhm.
So we wanted some kind of like plasticky or physical sound that like if you don't think about it in the moment, you're like, it was all that. And then if you go back, maybe you're like, oh, okay. So zombie Elmora is trying to use a comm. Jormag control.
Yeah. You're right. Jormag's controlling the hands.
Exactly.
Still trying to figure out the
Great.
control.
Yeah.
I was looking for some plastic, maybe clicking button sounds. Just going through my collection of plastic and rubber and stuff, and I was looking through my library and found I had an electric toothbrush that it was actually James Ackley, our old audio director, had brought this. Like, this sounds pretty cool. So I picked it up, and we hadn't charged it in a long time, so the battery was really low. So it just had this like weird little vibration, like not enough energy. So I'm like looked around real quick, and I grabbed a cardboard box lid, and I just kind of like moved it along it. I'm like, perfect. So I knew I was already starting to work on the bone skinner.
Yeah.
And I just like this could work. So I have a behind the scenes of that Foley session. Take a look at that.
Yeah.
That was so good.
All right, thank you, Pastor James.
Yeah.
And thank you, Cardboard Box Lid.
We're always listening, audio folk, and so there's like this sound theme. I'm just gonna bring this to work, and it's a broken or unused, or done with toothbrush. So, yeah, I found that sound. I tested it on an object, and I just wanted to get a bunch of different materials, just see what the difference is.
So you just slowed it down?
Oh, for the actual design of it?
Yeah.
I have a video of that as well.
Oh, hey.
With
Okay.
the additional layers. So that was one of the layers, or two of the layers was that toothbrush. I also used a bicycle gears and someone clicking their tooth.
Ow! Stop that.
Gotta find the right stuff.
We need Alex to like bust in here and be like, go to the tape.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so let's look at that one then. That worked out really, really well.
Amazing.
Yeah. The toothbrush on the cardboard is giving a nice, like, kind of like the whole body rattle kind of sound. The bike gears and the tooth clicking was just a type of higher content that just kind of was unsettling. And with the tooth clicking, I threw that through a delay, a ping pong delay. So it's kind of like just bouncing back and forth and kind of filling out that area.
Yeah.
So on top of just like a predator type of, it's just very creepy and ghostly and unsettling. So
This thing in the distance that's coming for you.
yeah.
All right.
Wow.
So good.
That was extremely cool.
It is.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the open world stuff that's at the Essence Masteries?
Yeah. So let's see. We spoke a little bit about essence manipulation masteries, the previous kind of guild chat preview we did, and so like reiterating that is supposed to kind of connect to the spirits of the wild in a way that like is also kind of haunting, right? Like it's disturbing. Like Samantha and I had a really fun time like thinking through its origins and how you are using this thing, and the person who's telling you about this thing is this like Asuran who feels like they have gone to very like dark lengths to like manipulate, right? Like pull. I had to kill some creatures to like put it in this pylon, and you're like absorbing this and using, you know what I mean? Like we wanted to like every decision that like was a part of this to like add to that theme of just like really just a little bit disturbing, a little bit odd.
I have to compliment you on what a very Asura delivery that was. That was like almost Inquest.
Very good.
Oh yeah, right. It rides that borderline
I have
of
to
like
get you a SAG card.
nice. Yeah. So yeah, we have those masteries in the open world, and as I said in like the blog post and whatnot, of like just wanting to add a little bit more progression for the players to play through, connect them to the rewards in such a way that connects to the strike missions, right? So like having all three of those mechanics and systems talk to each other, so they feel very well integrated. And then we also have the Raven mastery as well, which is great. Each statue has a different kind of pose, and that denotes like what its responsibilities are, like what it gives you and stuff like that. We have puzzles that you can interact with that. The meta, the mechanics of the meta take, using the barrier is what's going to help you fight there. That's pretty much like masteries in a nutshell there. I don't know how deep you want me to go.
So not very, because I have a pile of player
Perfect.
questions that I want to give you.
Yes.
But first I want to do one more kind of overarching thing. What was your favorite thing to work on for this particular episode? And then we're going to dive into like all of these player questions. Oops, we already did one of those player questions.
I think that for me, being a part of the process of developing the way in which characters are being manipulated by Jormag, the way that what they do in response to that, right? Ritlock and Krisha getting a little bickery, and there's going to be more of that coming in.
Yay!
And you know, just like watching Samantha and the other writers in the room, come up with how Jormag's influence manifests itself, and how it affects what people are thinking and what they're doing and what they trust and what they don't, and all of that stuff. In a general sense, that was my favorite part. I think probably in a specific sense, being in the VO sessions, first with Deborah, because we got her first, got the Jormag lines first, and then both with Fred and with Courtney, having them match her delivery in their own voices, though, was, I talked about the one with the Freyner, which is awesome, but I think the one with Almora is equally awesome, because you can tell, and people did, even in the trailer, that something is weird there, right? I mean, it's Almora's voice, but it doesn't sound like her talking exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a very ineffable, sort of subtle and nuanced thing that that audio took those tracks and did magic with, and so I never tire of listening to that stuff.
Yeah, with the Almora on there was an immediate, this is not quite right. Something is just a tiny bit off.
Because we know her. We didn't know the Freyner, but we know her. We know what she sounds like. We just saw her in the prologue. Yeah. Right? And then, yeah.
The unknown of that is what makes that so creepy. It's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I apologize, but because I have a couple. Chapter 1.
Oh, okay. I was like, what?
Just in my answer of like what was my favorite thing to work on. But chapter 1 was really great to work on, because like I think like that story instance was just really great to conceptually think about, of like how do we set this tone? What is the flow? What is the player's flow throughout the map? And like the progression of being creeped out and more creeped out and more creeped out was really fun to do. The Coden collection was really fun to work on, because Samantha and I just like nerded out of like, how can we make this the creepiest thing ever? And like I was telling someone, a player, that like we were in a meeting one time, and I know Frosty, we got to the point where like we were at the meat collection part of it, and Frosty's like, should the commander be like, I don't think this is right. And we all like spun our heads. We're like, no, we need this. Like, this has to happen. It has to be this creepy. So like that was
Frosty's
just a funny
like, God, okay.
Yeah, he's like, okay. So
Jeez.
that was really fun. Yeah, and then the subtle things like Asgear's legacy, like coming up with some of like the narrative stuff, or kind of pushing that and seeing other designers and narrative writers like add to that was really great. And then just like watching the map, like I didn't work on this, but watching like the whole team work in unison, and like Megan on the map side make a beautiful looking map, and like Kevin, one of our designers, like construct a really great like puzzle where like legit there is no right answer, and every player has that same like, oh crap, like on every like I don't know which one to choose. Like he did such a great job with that stuff. And
it is fantastic.
And Ben's a rock star. Like he just like would be pumping out content left and right, like high quality content. So like the whole team, seeing them all work together, it was really
awesome.
Someday we should do a like Guild Chat roving camera and spend all the time, I think, watching designers do that stuff, watching
awesome,
a little in our writer's room.
We have talked about that.
that was so good.
There's ask me later about some of the technical limitations.
Sure.
But it's on the table.
Okay.
Guild Chat has a table too.
I know it's brand new. It's right there.
How about you?
Kind of a lame answer, but
No.
everything.
That is a lame answer.
I know.
Okay.
Fun fact: before I got into like really just delved into audio, I almost wanted to get into practical effects for horror movies. I'm a big horror movie buff.
I can see that.
And
You don't say.
so the part that really got me into audio was psychoacoustics and like the like unconscious fear that goes into movies and scary things that just immerses you in it, and you don't even understand. It's like a great like psychological thing. I don't know. So kind of going into this episode and everything was pretty much like all the design, all the narrative. Like it's cool to see all the different things that scare people and like what they put into the game. Like these are my creepy ideas, and just so when I say everything, like just there was so much of it, like just between the ambience, between the events, the characters, just all those creepy things I could like apply to that was very fun. Just coming up with the ideas, how to really just solidify those moments was very rewarding. So
Love it. Okay, well, why don't we look at what some of the players will know? We actually already talked about that first one.
Yes.
Though the frost looks great, it makes the action difficult to see. Was this considered with the mechanic and intentional?
This was definitely considered. If you can believe it, it was a lot more soupy.
It
at
was.
one point.
That's true. It's a lot more clear now.
Yeah,
Whole monitor was covered.
Yeah, and we tend to start that right, and then start pulling back. There's definitely an intention to keep some of that as it like without hindering gameplay, but we wanted some feeling of claustrophobicness and like anxiety to come through when playing. Not being able to completely see where the enemies are coming from, feeling like it's closing in, like the screen border that grows over time. Like we wanted to add those elements in there to evoke that emotion.
make a note to that as well. We also applied a duck to the ambience and like all the sound when you kind of are getting that buff on you. So they not only are you like visually not seeing everything, you're like audibly not like it's like closing in,
like you muted it a little bit.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you meant a real duck.
I did
was
too.
Very confused.
I was.
I
Sorry.
think we all had
Howard
this
Donald.
duck.
we all had like this brief moment of duck.
Quacks, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, just bringing down the volumes and stuff like that. So
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Are you up for the first one?
Yeah. Do you want me to read it?
Okay. Will strike missions keep getting more difficult with future releases?
Yeah. Well, so speaking specifically to episode 1, we've mentioned that we're leaving the Bone Skinner for last for a couple reasons, and one of them I think is because it's the hardest, right? And it doesn't specifically have like you do this or you wipe mechanics like the Coden had, but it has a consistent like tick of like things are increasingly going to get worse for you if you don't start doing and paying attention to some more coordination. this
The
might get a
Bone
little
Skinner
bit
just one-shots you.
yeah, right. Like, there's nothing like that. So when I want to be careful when I say like more difficult. It's difficult in a different sense that maybe some people would be expecting. It is going to require the feeling of more communication with it. I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but yeah, long story short, it will get more difficult. Yeah, for episode 1. Yes.
Okay. Future question?
With the map?
Guys? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to read, or do you want me to read?
Go ahead.
Okay. Will the map keep expanding with future releases? Episode 2 will be expanding on this map. So, yes.
Easy answer.
Yeah. How will expanding Burrow Marches interact with map completion for those who have already mapped the current area? Great question. We are following the same conventions that we released with Dry Top and Silver Wastes. So the players who have gotten map complete now will have map complete. There will be more things to do. Like, you'll still be able to unlock vistas and POIs, but if you already have map complete, great for you. You have map complete. For those that don't get map complete, they'll have more things needed to do. So yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm curious about that first one.
Yeah. So will there be increasing need for Essence Mastery as the Icebreed Saga continues? For episode 2, we're absolutely billing on that. That is something we're committed to. Post episode 2, like, that stuff is being designed out, and like it's. Oh, I know we use like nothing's off the table like a lot, but like what I'm saying is that this is not my decision, but this is the decisions of the teams to look at everything. I know that like we are keeping that in mind and wanting to bring that forward. Like, we are not absolutely tied to it, but we don't want to abandon it for any reason. So that is, I hope that's clear. Why can't you mount in Dark Rime Dells? Great question. I actually answered this on the forums as well. We wanted to. So that moment was in the open world, and what we wanted to do was make it so that we wanted to reduce the amount of clutter and noise as much as possible, so that a ton of raptor mounts just standing around Amora, like, kind of took away from the moment. And so we wanted to make sure you can at least like see Elmora as much as possible and kind of reduce the amount of clutter on screen.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
This one.
I left that whole question in there on purpose.
Okay.
The Spawner.
How did the Spawner get
Don't
their
ask
mounts?
me.
They purchased Path of Fire. Well, this is go to narrative. So how did Spawner go and?
Why did the Spawner have mounts? Did they purchase Path of Fire, Tom? We have choked Tom.
Getting over the last remnants of my cold. I think it's safe to say they did not purchase Path of Fire.
Their Spawner, they stole it.
It's entirely possible that that Jormag managed to lure some mounts to the area by persuading them, psychically that they wanted to come and be ridden by Sons of Swanir. That's the theory I would go with.
That is also Samantha and I had talked about like.
No, really.
Yeah, no, seriously. Like not like maybe.
I totally made that up.
Well, I loved it. So like I think that's great. But like we did also talk about like
Valid.
Those Svanir don't always have to be like Svanir that were born and raised there, right?
That's
These
right.
could be Vigil Norn who have like slowly defected over time, who have had mounts and come over, right?
That's right.
And brought their mounts with them.
And brought their mounts with them.
Yes.
And it looks really cool to see Svanir
Also,
on
it
mounts.
looks
No,
cool.
absolutely it does.
Okay. That works for me.
Oh, sorry. I thought we were done. I wanted to do the next one.
Go for it.
Okay. Do Jormag minions conserve free will? I think that's a really great question. And I think it actually comes down to what you mean by free will. Because, as I said...
I didn't ask it.
No, I know.
Ruby, tell us.
Yes. Define that phrase for me, Ruby. Because, as I said, Jormag's tactic generally is to persuade... Seduce is a good word as well, that you used before, by getting you to want the thing that Jormag wants. And sometimes that happens without you necessarily being aware that Jormag is influencing your thinking. And sometimes it's more tangible, and you can actually hear Jormag's voice in your head saying things to you, right? And there are some reasons for why that varies that will be coming in the next episode. But... And so I think the tricky part of the answer is you may feel like it's your free will, and you may not realize that, in fact, you have been influenced to have felt that way, to have felt the thing that you're feeling, or come to the conclusion that you've come about it. So I think that's part of the very tricky duplicity of Jormag. Although I maybe I shouldn't use the word duplicity, because I think it's absolutely arguable that Jormag is actually acting always in good faith in terms of what Jormag wants in the world. I think Jormag's idea of what would be best for the world may be very different from a lot of other beings, because elder dragons, as we know, as a group, tend not to be all that aware of mortals. I mean, I think they probably notice us sort of like ants, if they notice us at all, right? Generally speaking. But that's not true of Aureen, because she grew up with mortals, and it's clearly not entirely true of Jormag as well. And so, but that's a very good key question that cuts to the issue of who is Jormag and what is Jormag doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that one.
This next one's really quick.
Okay.
Will we see more of the Bone Skinner later in the saga outside the striking missions? Yes.
Okay.
It was.
Good answer.
What was the most difficult thing you struggled with in Whisper in the Dark? I will say, seriously, trying to make a horror, like having horror elements in a MMO world is really tough to do. Those are best suited for single player games, and even then, single player games, like if you're trying to do like horror freaking out, like they're best suited when you don't really even have like guns or weapons. Like some of the best stuff is like when you just have a flashlight or you can't attack, right? And so you can attack in our game, and there could be 50 commanders running around attacking. So, like, how do you isolate that experience and really make something like the Bone Skinner really, really creepy and stalking you, right? So, there's a lot of like levers and stuff that we had to pull to accomplish that, and I thought we did a really great job with that. So,
I think that's really true. And from the narrative side, I don't know what Samantha would necessarily say, but I think similarly, when you're telling stories in games versus in more linear, traditional narrative media, movies, television, books, whatever. One of the things that you come to realize quickly is that a lot of the time you're not going to have some tools in your writer toolbox that you're used to having. Things like sequence or pacing or being able to determine when the player is going to find a certain thing out, right?
Yeah.
And so that impacts the extent to which you can do things like build suspense or create dramatic irony, which you can't do because that's based on the audience knowing something that the characters in the story don't, right? And if you're playing the commander, we can't have that.
Right.
And so I think those challenges, which are challenges that game narrative folks face in general, become especially heightened, as you're saying, in a situation where you're trying to produce or create an environment in which that's the overall effect. And I think that from our side, what Samantha and Julia and the writers did really, really effectively to manage to still make that happen is to put enough, this is what I meant when I said sort of moving some of what might in the past have been Golden Path material into the open world, so that they're discrete little things that happen that you will just come upon when you come upon them, or sometimes they're like Jormag whispers that will just occur when they occur, right? Yeah. But there is an overall compounding effect, whatever order you're experiencing them in, of a growing dread and a growing sense of ominousness. And I think that's part of how we deal with that challenge, you know, and it is both in the second part of the prologue and in this episode especially. I've personally I've told the team, my team, and also the designers this. I've been just amazed at how effectively the world feels like it's telling the story in a way that I don't know that we've ever done so effectively before. You know, I just think that's amazing.
This is a good question for everybody too. So everybody gets on the hook.
Well.
Finding that toothbrush.
Finding the toothbrush.
I don't reach real far back.
I've seen the Foley closet, man. That's legitimate.
We try to keep that tidy to it. Some of the new tech involved in this, with like having the different, everyone kind of doing their own story in the open world, was interesting for us. Just trying to make sure there's a lot of sound that are happening between like Raven visions and spooks. It's not like blasting everyone in the map with those sounds, and just really making those like some technical things we had done to make that solo for the person, and keep everything nice and tight and spooky. Well,
especially when you said earlier that silence is a big part of it.
Correct.
And not just, here's a wall of noise, enjoy.
Yeah. There was a moment when I'd implemented the bone skinner chitter that was like map wide.
No. Okay,
good.
that's
Yeah.
horrifying.
Yes, that was kind of fun, but
It's-
not intended. So
Yeah, and like that's the other challenge, right? Like you mentioned map wide, like you want us and pacing. I laughed when you said that because like in order for things to be creepy, it has to not always be around, and you have to be careful not to implement a system or a mechanic that allows that to potentially always be around.
Yeah.
Right.
So you have to have like a lot of hands on the controls to make sure this thing is paced well, so it stays ominous and creepy and unknown, right?
Yep. Placement of things in the world,
Yeah.
right? Events, sounds, all of that matters a lot in that situation because you need those lulls and then for it to come back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I really did enjoy, like we touched on this earlier, but you see other players kind of walking and doing their own story, and like as I guess a developer, someone knowing that that's what's happening right there. Like I was actually doing the story. I saw someone kind of walk by, like like just, all the things that are happening to them right now. And like it's just fun. It's like they're all having their own moment right there.
Yeah.
So
That's so
fun.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know we talked about this before when we brought in the ability for everybody to have that NPC in the open world. Like you said, Bram is a raven for other people. And seeing that and knowing what's happening that's such a fun thing that we've been able to implement. And all of the little things like that. It's really enjoyable getting to bring that tech in and give players that experience in the open world.
Yeah.
I don't think we talked about this, but I really loved when you see the bone skinner kind of hunting or stalking you. If you approach it, it disappears. And I think that also happens with reindeers as well.
Yeah.
That was cool.
That is also
That's a very cool
only possible with our imposter tech.
Yep.
Because for you, it disappears. For everybody else watching, it's still stalking.
Right.
That's even scarier, right? Because
That
everyone
is
watching,
even
like,
scarier, yeah.
oh my god, he's gonna
Yeah.
get him.
And that was man. There was it Dead Space? I believe it was Dead Space 2, or Dead Space 1, which is another great like horror example. There's a moment that one of our designers, Cam, was explaining that like their friend saw like a party scene. Like it looked like a birthday party, but to them it was just like gore and everyone's dead. And like them communicating about them seeing different things was scary in itself because it was just like this disconnect.
Yeah.
And so that kind of gets hit on with when you can see the bone skinner, but somebody else has tried to get close and it disappears, right? Like
But when the world is telling you that it's being specific to you, right? That's one reason people like, lines that are race specific. And in this episode, or excuse me, in the upcoming episode, this is going to be even more true, right? Like people feel like, oh, the game is really seeing me as an individual playing the game, right? And I think that our world is moving forward. We have a number of things planned that are going to make it more and more feel like, yeah, the game sees you, specifically you, and is talking to you, and that's kind of...
That's terrifying.
Yes. It's going to be pretty cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, I see our next round of developer guests hanging
There
out
they
the back.
are.
So why don't we let the three of you get back to work, and we will talk to Jess, Chelsea, and Chris in just a couple of minutes. Stick around. We will be right back.
My champion.
Hi guys, welcome back, and we are in the second half of Guild Chat. Let's talk about the cinematics in the game now. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, talk about who you are, what you do here at ArenaNet, and what you worked on for episode 1. Jess first, welcome to Guild Chat for the first time.
Cool, thank you for having me. I'm nervous, but I am here.
You're going to be amazing. We're all here for her.
So my name is Jessica. I go by Jess, and so I am a cinematic layout artist, and I worked on the episode 1 trailer.
Awesome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Chelsea.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm the cinematics director, and for this episode, I stepped back into an artist role and was the cinematic artist for the cinematic for episode 1.
How much fun was that?
So much fun to get to do art again instead of being in meetings and more meetings and more meetings.
You heard the lady, she needs meetings.
No, I don't.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris. I am an audio person, and I do sounds for the cinematics, and I mix them, and I help work with our composers and get them writing music, and I also work in the game, and pretty much whatever they throw at me, the audio team, we're the art of keeping plates spinning. A lot of things.
The art of keeping plates spinning is like one of the best descriptions of that I have ever heard because you guys are working on so many things at once.
Yeah.
All right, so why don't we talk about the episode 1 trailer to start with? Do we want to start by taking a peek at the finished product and then we'll kind of talk about building it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
Commander, I need your help here. At Jorah's Keep.
The gate's open.
But no one here to greet us.
No. What happened? We need to fix this.
Voice. The one in the back of my head.
You hear it too, don't you?
You can't trust them. I can protect you.
You guys, it's so creepy. I like it.
That's the goal.
So, good work.
Thank you.
Congratulations. How did you get started? What was your starting point? Just like, okay, we need to terrify everybody.
Yes.
And it's cold.
Yes. Literally, we need to terrify everybody, and I want this to be scary was like the first thing that came into my mind. I had a little jump start off of like where to start with the trailer. Jason kind of like started off with some temp audio that he had in, and then I kind of like rolled with that for a little bit as I rolled onto the project in the early stages. And then the first thing I really thought, I was like, what kind of temp music do I want? What kind of games do I play that would have something that would match this trailer? And so I looked at not just games, but also shows. So I'm a huge fan of Vikings, and I just really, not only did I want to scare people, but I also just really, really, really wanted to have the kind of, what would the Norn music sound like? That was another thing that came to my mind, and that I really, really, really wanted to like portray in the audio and like put the Norn culture out there, since that's what the story's about, like Norn and Char.
Totally.
And yeah, so I looked at like Vikings, I think Horizon Zero Dawn. Those are my two main ones.
Okay.
And and I knew that I also really wanted percussion in there. It needed to be there for the feature section. We needed to get this feature section rolling because in the beginning, the feature section was just there. You didn't really notice that the feature section was going along lines in the early version of the trailers. And so I got a lot of feedback on that. And then something needed to help drive the features together. So that's kind of where I started. Basically started with temp music and rolled from there.
Okay, that works.
Yeah.
So, where did you come in on the audio on the trailer? Did you start playing with it right out of the gate? Or?
Well, the cinematics team with Jason Byfield and Jess does a really good job of making my job easy because they usually know what they want. And in this case, it's funny because Jess was talking about temp music selection, and I remember early on I was really trying to get y'all to go with like, we're asking, what's this trailer about? What's this episode about? And we're talking about Bram's journey and going to find his, what was it, guildmates?
Yeah, his dead guildmates.
His dead guildmates. And I was like, well, what if we did like an indie film road trip blues thing? And there was a hot minute where I was pushing that. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, right? And it was like, it's kind of cool. In the end, big epic drums for the win. Nothing gets the hype going like that. So that was something, I think I went away on like a Friday, and Jess, you came back with some temp music, and we were like, this is great, this is working. And then I work with the cinematics team to just massage some of the language around speaking to composers, and then we sent that to Stan Lepard, who did a great job on this, and I think like first or second version he sent it back to us, and it was great. So I'm involved along the way, basically just as a resource if they need help. But for the trailers, these folks are pretty great at what they do and knowing what they want. So it's not a lot of work for me. And the music really drives these. So
Yeah.
I want to talk to some of the chem work that you did.
Okay.
Looking at the strike mission bosses and just how epic they feel.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about where your inspiration comes from.
Oh my goodness gracious. That was actually my favorite part of the whole entire trailer to work on. Especially like the first time I went into the strike missions in there, my inspiration actually comes from raiding. So I raid in Guild Wars 2, and the bosses in there, I wish I could bring a camera in. And another inspiration was like keeping the camera moving around so you don't actually just see the actual like boss and it's just there in front of you. You want to see the full thing because their animations were insane, especially the Codon one, which is like the red. And it was just amazing. So I needed to keep the camera moving around instead of just making sure the camera just goes forward, because then you wouldn't see the
full on shot.
Yeah, you wouldn't see the flip over the back that they do, and then the epic poses that they end in. And having the Icebeard Shaman, I think the Franir, like wipe out into black and then transition into the more spooky like part was like a last minute change actually. Having the camera wipe to black, I think that was a last minute change.
So what prompted that?
Having it just wipe out to like the forest, it didn't really feel too impactful. And I remember watching a lot of trailers and seeing it just like epic moment, black. And then it goes to like calm, or at least like some troubled moment. So I tried that. It worked. I just put it into one of our Wednesday critiques, and no one really said anything about it. So okay.
It worked great.
Yep.
No objections. I'm going
No objections. Yep. Exactly.
I'm glad you brought that up, Chelsea, because your in-game experience and this is a thing that's cool that I can kind of run with and work into the trailer, because I know this is what's going to read well.
Yes.
Comes across. And actually you reminded me that was something that someone called out when we were looking at this internally in some meetings, and how good that looked, and that was something that got a lot of praise internally. So nice.
Yeah.
What was something else that you really liked working on in there?
I really liked going in and actually putting like Bram and our commander Anja into a scene and actually like making it kind of from scratch. Like basically having custom shots in the trailer. Like when Bram walks into the keep to see his dead guildmates. That was we had to do mocap for that, and also on just standing at the gate, like at the very end. That was also we had mocap for. So those weren't actually like just in the game. They were shot in the game engine, but like just putting that together and figuring out how to use the tools that we currently have for this project was like astonishing. I loved it. I loved the challenge that it had. There were a lot of challenges, and like we worked through it all, and there was like just a lot of communication that I learned, and so many people helped me, and it worked out just great. And it was also, I think, my first mocap session that I actually really like. I wasn't acting in. I had a part. I was like co-directing, and it was really fun. It was really, really fun to work with mocap.
That's awesome. So you worked on the cutscene inside the game, not the trailer.
Correct.
Right?
Well, I did help a little bit.
I
Yeah,
didn't want to just
You did the
completely
bone
like
skinner.
and nothing from you.
No. Yeah, helped with the bone skinner shots. Went
Really?
in there, yeah.
Okay.
Because I was already in the horror mindset, so...
Were you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just rolled off of finishing the in-game cinematic, and I look at my team going, I still need to do artwork. Please don't send me back into meeting prison.
And then you hear like the Outlook ding, and it's like,
No!
a very different kind of horror.
Yes. Constant meetings. So, yeah, it was I got to keep doing art. So thank you for letting me.
You were so excited to work on the bone skinner too.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so
Turned out so well.
what was the process of getting the bone skinner shots like? What were you after?
The unknown. I mean, eventually you see
Good
like the
news.
bones. Yeah. I mean, we work a lot with marketing, and so we do help coordinate that what goes in the trailer is plussing whatever other campaign or media outlet that they're utilizing. So the bone skin had already been shown in Extra Life. But still, if we could get the sense of like, okay, it was shown, but do you know how it's going to interact with you?
Right.
And we saw another shot of it in the strike mission, but it was very much just in its attack.
Yeah.
And so this would be like the first time kind of seeing it in its environment in the forest, and just getting hints of it as it's walking away. That was the first shot. The second shot was developed later because like, okay, well, we kind of need to pay off the bone skinner. So then I developed the other shot of it, like kind of turning to look at you, and then Jess did the whole overlay of Jormag speaking to make it seem like maybe is the bone skinner speaking to you right now? Is that Jormag speaking through the bone skinner? And so it's just that extra element of the unknown that makes it creepy.
Yeah. Again, terrifying in a
That's
good
the
way.
goal.
Yes, that's the whole turning to look at you and like, is this thing actually speaking to me? You know what? I'm just going to go. I will go to a meeting because I would rather be in a meeting.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
So, do we have in progress shots from the trailer?
No,
Okay.
not this time.
I was like, I know we have the lead up shots. We need to make sure we get some mocap stuff from you next time.
yes.
So, but I would like, if you can, to talk a little bit about the process where you start for the trailers.
Like from the very beginning.
Yeah, and how that run up goes. Just like walk us through it a little bit chronologically. And
Okay.
you don't have to like spend the rest of your life doing it, but kind of how that works.
So basically, I start out. There's a lot that I started out with, but basically, I started out with figuring out the tone and the mood of the overall trailer, and then after that, I kind of just started talking to Chelsea and Jason and Chris about where I wanted to go with it. And then first, I started getting together the temp music, getting the VO from Chris and putting that together to get the timing out. And then after that, I started. I just put like the first and second like takes of the temp audio into Premiere, and then I just went in game and started like just capturing everything. We had a strike mission on call where we were playing through the first versions of the strike missions, like all three of them, and then I went in with that and I just put my character in there, made them invisible, and then just like went into free cam mode and just shot everything, just moved the camera everywhere. Just trying to feel how to use the free camera, and then also how to just capture because I was also learning how to capture video game.
Oh gosh, at the same time?
At the same time, I was learning how to
I'm
do that.
super impressed right now.
I had such a hard time controlling that camera, the first couple of times.
I'm very much not good at it, so yeah.
And then after that,
I can hear Mark laughing. And it's a sympathetic thing because he knows your pain.
It's a lot.
And
is-
you were learning Cameo at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh God!
Yeah, I know.
Stop!
I just threw her in the deep end.
You really did.
I did.
Okay, you're a superhero, so congrats.
Oh, thank you. It was. I was thrown into the deep end. However, I did ask to be
You
thrown
did?
into the deep end.
I gave her
Oh.
a
I
couple
saw it coming.
options.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just kept swimming until I learned doggy paddle.
I'm impressed. Seriously, that's a lot to take on at once.
It was like this was also my first project as well, like being part of the ArenaNet team. So it was a leap of faith, and it ended very well.
Yes, it did. Congratulations, because that is okay. It's just like swimming while you're juggling and on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And make it look good.
That's my management style.
Okay, yeah, I can.
Good luck. No.
Godspeed.
That's exactly how it was. Every time someone's like, "Hey, for feedback," and then they give their feedback, I'm like, "Okay." Good. Afterwards,
I'll add it
okay.
to the list.
Yep, add it to the list.
I feel like someone was here and they said something, but I couldn't hear over the roaring in my ears.
But overall, it's like in-game capture, getting feedback on the temp music and timing, then doing a spotting sheet for Chris so we can start. So we started with working with the composer, and he could pass along my thoughts on how everything was supposed to feel, getting timing fleshed out, adding and taking out captures that didn't really flow well, and then making sure that the features got the time that they deserved. So the players knew, hey, this is what we're offering this episode. Be hyped for it. Because I am. Or I guess I was, since the episode's out. But and the main thing that I had in my mind throughout the whole entire process, also while getting the feedback, was to make sure that I was making a trailer that not only would hype me as a current and not longtime players for the Guild Wars 2, but also what would hype my friends, what would hype the company, what would hype my guild, my guild mates. So that was one thing that really just kept me straight and focused, and make sure to take all the feedback, and then also make sure to think, okay, is this feedback doable in the time that I have to hit all of my milestones? And then who do I need to talk to in order to get this trailer to where it needs to be? Because there was also a lot of communication with the other side, the marketing team as well. So I had way more meetings than I thought I would. So it was meeting Monday, or I was in meetings for
I
think 3 to 4 hours of the day, half of my day.
Yeah, that sounds like Monday.
Yep, meeting Monday. But it was totally worth it. So yeah, it was just after that, just capturing fine tuning everything. Working with Chris a lot. He helped me a lot figure out the tone and the final how many there's a part A, B, and C for the mood throughout the whole entire trailer, and what I wanted to accomplish.
Wow. Well, congratulations on your first journey out there into
Thank
Trailerland.
you.
It turned out really well.
Thank you. It was so fun to make. So fun.
I'm so glad. That's fantastic. So, well, good job tossing her in the deep end.
She asked for it.
Worked out extremely well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the unbelievably creepy in-game cinematic. Can we watch the final version of that?
Do we want to do the behind the scenes? I guess let's do the final.
Let's start with the final version so we have context.
Okay.
And then we'll go behind the scenes.
Champion, it's time I treat you with the respect you deserve. Speak face to face.
That voice.
The air is thick with change. I feel it, even as I dream beneath the ice.
Jormak.
You feel me as you feared Kralkatorik. That is natural. But I Ice fortifies. Ice protects. All this war, all this pain, Aureen wants to end it. And I can help her. I want to help her. Terrible things lurk just beyond the horizon. But you can bring eternal peace to our world. In time, you'll realize you made me. And when you do, I'll be waiting.
I honestly hate saying this because it's such a garbage pun and I don't mean it, but it's chilling. It is, I know, I hate it, but it is, stop. I don't want this any more than you do, but it is. Nobody likes this. Nobody liked that. But it really is so unbelievably terrifying. Fred Tatascior's voice, like, breaking through, and the creepy, unnatural movement of the Freinier's jaw just combines to bring this creepy terror, and you guys did such a good job. I hate it.
Yeah, this was I don't want to say challenging cinematic, but it was definitely one that wrangling in all the help that we get on a cinematic into this vision. Like, I had to keep repeating what the vision was because it's not full on horror. Because at the end of it, you want to walk away going, maybe Jormag is right. Maybe this dead thing that was talking to me, it's getting to me, right? And so that's not your traditional horror.
Right.
And so when we set out to this piece, you know, the pitch was like, it is definitely a horror. Like, the whole episode is horror. But this moment, it's not about a zombie coming after you. It is about your psyche getting challenged or your values getting challenged in this moment.
Yes.
Now, there's a lot of horrific elements. I mean, a dead man's talking to you.
Yes. But Aureen wants this thing.
Right.
Aureen wants what you want, and I want to help her.
Yeah. So getting a cinematic to really get into that psychological horror. There's a few things that I think we did for that. So on one front, we had the animation team help us because we need some extra animation support. So thanks to Chuck and Cot and Ron. All of them helped. And of course, Dahi, you know, she was the cinematic animator on this. And so, you know, between Chuck and Cot, they had some ideas because Chuck is all about horror. He is just like, but like the horror.
Is he really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And so he had an idea of how he wanted this shaman to move. And we had a lot of back and forth discussions like, well, how is Jormag controlling this dead body? You know, is it going to be floating like a puppet on a string?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it still kind of needs grounded. Okay, but it's not a zombie, right? It's not full-on zombie where, you know, it's like coming after you to eat your brains. It's and so the idea that Chuck eventually distilled down from all of that was, okay, Jormag is still struggling with this power a little bit. And it's kind of like a spider that spiders don't have muscles or anything. It's just they pump blood into their legs, and that's how their legs move.
Okay.
And so it was that concept of like Jormag's just pumping magic here and there to make the shaman move. And so that's like, you know, the arms go limp, but then sometimes it comes up and it's straightened up. Or if the feet walk forward, more of the body gets more loose. And then at the very end, when, you know, the whole thing kind of straightens up and talks straight at the commander, or the NPCs, implied commander, that Jormag has final control of the body, but it can't last very long, and so then it just drops at the end because it like put all this power into the shaman. And Greg helped animate this as well with the jaw. He's, you know, the whole facial thing, and so that was the body mechanics behind it, and then the face was, you know, again that same concept, like it's struggling to move the jaw because the magic's only coming in here and there.
Yeah.
And the camera. So I want to talk a little about camera, and we've got a video that shows kind of like some of the stages of going into the cinematic. What I decided to do, well, I was inspired by a couple films out there. Am I allowed to share what the inspirations were?
Yes, yeah,
okay.
please.
So there's a film called The Lobster. It's a fantastically awkward film. And then there's another one from the same director. I'm horrible with names, but it's called A Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Okay.
And that one will leave you feeling weirded out. And it is true psychological horror. And one of the techniques used in those films is just a slow zoom in the whole time, which has the sense of danger just slowly coming at you and you can't do anything about it.
Okay.
Whereas like a physical movement in space with a dolly, a lot of Spielberg movies will do that, like just the physical movement makes you feel like you're in that space and you've got the freedom to move around.
Sure.
So the cinematic starts with the camera freedom, like the camera's physically moving in space until the shaman wakes up and Jormag's in control of the scene. Every time we're shooting the shaman, it's that slow zoom in like a glacier just slowly coming at you.
Okay.
You can't do anything about it. And then when we cut back to the NPCs, it's the shaman's always in the shot because he's in control and it's frozen in place like ice. And so that was kind of the camera language I built into the scene.
Oh, wow.
And, during the process of the cinematic, it so many times there's feedback of like, well, it doesn't really feel like horror. Well, okay, let me add this horror thing. Oh, let me do this horror thing. Let me do this horror thing. And I kept having to pull it back. Like, no, it's not physical horror.
Not necessarily what it is.
Right. It's not physical horror. It's psychological horror. And so you have to kind of warm it up a little bit. And on that note, I want to talk about music. Yeah. I started with an eerie kind of temp music piece. And that was one of those elements where it just wasn't working for the scene because it was going too far in the horror direction. Chris comes along and is like, well, maybe.
Well, context I'm going to give is that the creepy music was working at one point at the very beginning of the cinematic when it was like all gray box and like the shaman was just like a naked gray dude.
Yeah.
And he looked very human. So having the music convey that something was wrong was working for the scene. But as soon as the skin came in and the normal looking human looked like this really messed up zombie, now all of a sudden the music and the visuals were kind of like plussing to a degree that it was like, well, it just wasn't working anymore. The visuals were already telling us something's wrong, so the music telling us something wrong was kind of redundant. And one of my favorite exercises, and this is from George Clinton, who's a film composer who I studied with a little bit in college. He was saying that if he's ever stuck on the music for a scene, he can't figure out what's working. He just likes to put something ridiculous to picture that absolutely won't work, but it sometimes sparks an idea. And like for me, that's always like Latin mambo. But in this case, I was listening to some other stuff, and it was music that kind of had this, what would the right word be? Like
warmth.
A sweetness or a warmth.
Yeah.
It basically, I think, was from the lens that Jormag is right. Like Jormag is good, and the music should be kind of like this embrace, which is kind of why it started to feel. I went and played it for Chelsea, and I was like, is this working? You're like, yeah, this is working. Because again, we're seeing the horror, all the NPCs are like, what's happening? But the music was going like, hey, everything's okay, everything's cool. And what was really interesting about that too for me was we have a producer, Wendy Despain, who was kind of like our temperature on this, where when the visuals got horrific and the music was horrific, she said, hey, for what it's worth, it's horrific, but I'm not getting that really uncomfortable feeling like, why is this zombie making sense? And that was kind of our gauge at week to week when we'd get music back, is saying like, Wendy, does it feel uncomfortable again? And finally we got the music to a place where she said, yes, this is working. And before we had decided to do the sweet music, it was really interesting because Chelsea was getting a ton of notes on like camera, animation, all these things.
Yeah.
And I went to Chelsea and Wendy and said, I got it. Like the music can solve this problem. It's not about what's happening visually. It's about, in the case of the scene, what the music is at that time was not doing for the scene. Does that answer the question?
It does. And
it was a very over hill and through the valley to get there, but
it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's two elements to any film or game cinematic that manipulates the audience emotions in the scene. And that's the camera and music. Because both in real life don't always exist. I mean, sure, we've got cameras in front of us.
Yes.
But generally, like in a room, let's say you're just like talking to a person, okay, how you're acting or how you're animating, right? It's just who you are, who your character is. Like what's in the background that's just there. What effects would be in that room. But a camera isn't.
Right.
And so that's the one element that helps manipulate the audience emotions around what they should be focusing on, what they should be feeling, and the music. So I think, the scene itself, I mean, like it's creepy with the whole like, dead spider kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's the right way to
Very
put it.
much
Yeah. The camera's locking you in place, essentially, and slowly moving you towards this idea. And the music's telling you
everything is fine.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things that was really difficult about this is that cinematics are, I think, one of the most iterated upon and contained and reviewed products that we make at the studio. So every week, a couple times a week, we're putting this in front of people and saying, is it working, basically? And we're getting feedback. And for the audio, we had made a couple decisions that we were kind of waiting towards the end on just because of how busy we were, where the music was going to do this sweetness thing, which was taking a lot of iteration to get it right. And where in the last episode, we had this really detail-oriented sound effect pass. This one we said, well, let's go really soft and warm and abstract and have as few sound effects as possible to help it read, because it is this really weird space. Let's not be overly detailed, and it's almost like we want to hypnotize the listener, and if having too much sound is going to break that spell, we don't want to do it. And so I think that's always scary for me when you're putting less in and just having faith on the picture and the story, all of the things together to sell it. Because my first instinct is always to go like, well, let's put a sound on everything. And that's not always right. So when we made that decision, that was scary for me every week to go in there and be like, is this going to work?
Yeah.
Excuse me. So, yeah.
Makes sense. All right. Well, do you want to look at the work in progress stuff and kind of talk about how that progressed?
Sure. Well, actually, can we do the pet one first?
Okay.
Because you're on sound.
We're on sound.
Okay. Yeah, do the pet one first.
Is that okay? Should I explain it first?
Please.
So, everybody loves cuddly pets. So
and yet,
and so two things. So this was just a funny accident where Chelsea gave us a recording of one of her cats on a visit to the vet that was losing their mind a little bit.
Is that what that cat was so angry?
And
anytime she goes in the car, that's what she sounds like.
Both of mine are like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we took that and put it in a synthesizer, and it just sounds like, well, you'll hear it, but for me, it's kind of like cat prison in space. Like it's really messed up. And we were laughing so hard when we heard it. So we put that into the scene, and you'll see where we put it. And then the other one was when they did the great facial animation of the zombie clacking their teeth. I was like, I gotta hear that teeth clack. And then I'd sit there with a microphone and kind of like, and I'm like, I'm not doing this to my teeth. And a good friend of mine, Juan Uribe, who's a sound designer over at Bungie, we hang out, and him and his wife have this adorable dog, Jasper, who does not bark, but when he wants attention, whenever I go over there and he wants me to sit down on the couch so I'll pet him, he just clacks, clack, 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 clack. And I called him. I said, man, I got this scene. I'm not going to do this to my teeth. Can you please save me and send me a few snippets of Jasper clacking his teeth? And he was like, yeah, of course. So you'll see unfortunately just pictures of the animals. I don't have videos of them, and then where we used it in the scene. But it was very fun to leverage fuzzy friends that we love so much, and
their anger.
Their anger at getting health care.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Needed. You would think it would make it less creepy. Like it's 10 times more adorable, but somehow equally creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was where I had fun on this one. So
But was your cat okay?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a standard vet visit,
Just
but
angry about healthcare.
oh yeah, and the car.
Yep.
Yes.
And the car.
I had to drive with them for 14 hours. So when I moved from the previous state I was to here, starting back up at ArenaNet, 14-hour drive. That constantly, every second.
We did that. We should share stories sometime because that was my experience. 2,300-mile drive.
Yeah.
We got kitty Valium from the vet. It did nothing. I
Yeah.
should have taken it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It did. It helped not at all. It was
Yeah.
just 2 days of complaining and anger. And at one point, they knocked over the litter box in their carrier
Oh,
just to
no.
punish me.
So I had a stay the night at a hotel, like, halfway through this journey. She found her way in the box spring of the bed.
Ours did it too. We thought we lost her. It was
Yeah.
like Utah or
Where-
something. And I was
yeah.
like, she's gone.
Where is she? And then I looked everywhere and finally pulled open the mattress, and I'm starting to hear this like little pawing in the box spring.
Yes.
Like, how did you get in there? I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, she chewed a hole in the underside of the box spring.
yeah.
It was a whole thing.
Oh man.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Solidarity. Cats
Yes.
that do not travel well.
Yes.
It was not great. It was awful.
Yeah.
Worth it because we're here now.
Yes.
So yay.
But yeah.
And your cat's in the game.
Yeah. Sure, she's happy about that.
Probably happier than when she was in the car.
That's true.
So-
Definitely.
That was fantastic. We were talking to Joseph in the last segment about just the incredibly random places that you find the perfect sound, and Jasper clacking his teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's just like for me, it's like there's like a sympathetic pain I feel when I hear that sound associated with the visual of a human
Yeah,
doing that. And so I was like, when I played it for a few people and they were like, "Oh God," I was like, "Perfect."
Well, that was that was the Joseph started like flicking his fingernail on his teeth. I was like, "Get out!
Yeah.
Leave. I can't. No. Ugh.
Yeah.
I hate it." Yeah, that worked out extremely well.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. So, what else do you want to go over?
Behind the scenes thing?
Yeah, let's do the behind the scenes thing.
All right. So I have a video of, I know we've talked about this before in Guild Chat, but I put together a video of just kind of like all the stages of the cinematic. And it's, yeah, we can.
Okay, let's take a look.
Yeah.
Champion. It's time I do with the respect you deserve. Speak face to face.
That voice.
The air is thick with change. I feel it, even as I dream beneath the ice.
Jormak.
You fear me as you feared Kral Katori. That is natural. But ice fortifies. Ice protects. All this war, all this pain, Orin wants to end it. And I can help her. I want to help her. Terrible things lurk just beyond the horizon. But you can bring eternal peace to our world. In time, you'll realize you made me. And when you do, I'll be waiting.
So good, you guys. Okay, so that's the process.
Yeah.
In a
It's
nutshell.
Yeah, it takes like 2 minutes. No.
No.
No, sorry.
I feel like that's just a cruel joke. That's not nice.
We were watching a movie the other day, and they had this advertisement for like a new laptop that can do all this like 3D stuff, and they made it look like it's a click of a button. I'm
God.
sorry, it's a joke that like hurts
No.
so bad.
Yes.
but,
I was like, no.
that's a whole 4-month-long process right there. And yeah, you start with the storyboards.
Yeah.
Because you need to make sure, are we on the right path with before you really dive into doing a lot of work for it. You saw the mocap acting, raw mocap. Then you get into the layout stage, and then there's just like a lot of iteration on there. And especially when you switch to the engine, that can be rough sometimes. We've got some really good tools. We've got a wonderful tech art team that makes our lives easier. It's still a game engine. And so when you go from like Motion Builder or Maya into the Guild Wars 2 engine, there's always going to be some cleanup. And then double checking that back with the animation team. And of course, the animators are iterating this whole time.
Yeah.
And then you do final cameras, and the audio comes in, and the final lighting, and it just all kind of comes together. But the biggest, I think, challenge for a cinematic artist is, you are being that film director for that piece, and it's keeping the vision the whole time.
Through those 4 months.
Through those 4 months with different talent coming on board to help out with the scene here or there, and each one will have, input that is good input.
Yeah.
It's just making sure it's all aligned to a single vision.
Yeah. That much time, that many different brains, that much iteration.
Yeah.
And things are changing within game within the development of the game itself as well. So there's a lot to make align. So good work, because I know it is very, very difficult, and paring it down to a 1 or 2 minute video is a lot to do.
Yeah. It is.
So, well, it turned out really, really well, and that creepy factor balancing with that nice music and everything is fine. This is a good idea.
You want this to happen.
That you do.
Yeah, this would be good for you.
Yeah. Aureen wants it.
Yeah.
I just want to help Aureen.
Yeah.
Yeah. It lent itself, all of the cinematics lent itself to that tone of the episode really, really well. So.
Do you have a little Easter egg?
Yay.
Little bit. When we were putting in, it's Fred, right? Sorry, I'm terrible with names. The voice actor for the
Fred
zombie.
Tatasciore.
Yeah. When we were deciding what words to put in there, kind of has a creepy message to it if you can pull out of there. Or pull out the words he is saying on top of Jormag's speech to you. So should I guess I'll just spoil it, because I don't know if you can
know.
No?
I want to know.
You want I think so there's a line of I want.
Well, if you don't want to know, mute her now. Okay. There's 30-second delay.
I mean, it's fine. I don't even know if it's possible to pull it out. You have to really listen to it. But Jormag saying, I want to help her. So something Aureen wants this too, and I want to help her. And Fred says something just, I want her. Instead of, I want to help her. It's just, I want her.
And I think it's terrifying.
Well, I'm blanking on as soon as I'm I can have this thing, I'm blanking on the lines. But there's something also where I can end it, end all the war and pain, and Aureen wants to end it too. And again, it's just dropped out to Fred saying, end it. Just end it.
Okay, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
But a really cool detail.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you can hear when Fred's coming in, it's kind of a counter message to what Jormag's telling you.
Okay, that's fantastic, and I love that little detail.
Yeah.
So, on that note, we should probably end it too.
Yes. I want to end it. I think. Wow, I can't remember the lines anymore. I worked on it for 4 months, so yeah.
It's just burned into your brain now forever.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us this time.
Thank you again for
I hope
having
we can
me.
bring you back again another show. So, and thank you all for spending time with us, and we will see you on the next Guild Chat. Have a great weekend.